What's up, everybody? Go Burns, bringing you a little something different via my vlogs channel. And I put this poll up on Twitter a few days ago asking my subscribers if they wanted me to add something else non-gaming related to the vlogs channel. And overwhelmingly, 71% of you voted on adding TV movie reviews. So that's what we're going to start doing. Now, this is technically not my first movie review on the vlogs channel. I did review Independence Day Resurgence over a year ago. So that's technically the first episode. And hopefully this will go better with each passing episode of my review series, which is going to be about movies, new movies, old movies, franchises, even TV shows. It's going to go all over the place when it comes to TVs and movies. But if you're interested in vlogs, I also have vlogs on the channel as well. And if you're into gaming, like Grand Theft Auto, Mafia, Red Dead, Batman, you can find all that over on my main channel. And all that, of course, is linked below in the description section. Without further ado, let's get to today's review. Some would consider this to be a remake, but technically it's not, because this is the first time it made it to the big screen. The 1990s version was a miniseries, which, by the way, was fantastic. You know, with, of course, Tim Curry as the lead role back in the original version as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. This version is a little bit scarier, and that one scared me a lot when I was a kid, and of course I loved it. But yes, this is one of the more successful films in 2017. According to Wikipedia, it's already grossed over $400 million worldwide. It's been at the top for at least a few weeks now, and that says something about this movie, because it doesn't really have any big cast of characters, actors or actresses. In fact, most of the cast is an ensemble of child actors, and the only one that is relatively known is one of the actors from Stranger Things, which season 2 is coming in October. Of course, I'm very much excited about that because I'm an 80s kid. But the actor that plays Pennywise in the movie, he's a relative unknown, but he did a great job as Pennywise. Now, that's not to belittle Tim Curry's role as Pennywise in the 1990s. It's just they each had a different spin on Pennywise, and for both their times, they both worked out rather well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you my thoughts spoiler-free, and then I may do some spoilage after my review, in case you guys were wondering. So feel free, let me know below in the comment section your views, your opinions, your thoughts regarding the It movie, or more appropriately, It Chapter 1, because it was only based off half of the novel by Stephen King. So the setting of the movie version of It is obviously different than the book version or the miniseries version, whereas in the book and miniseries, it follows the kids in the 50s. And the decision was made to make the setting in the past up to the late 80s. And I think it works rather well because of the fact that whenever they do Chapter 2, it's going to be set relative in present day, you know, like 2017, even if it does come out 2 years from now or whenever they get around to making it the sequel to It Chapter 1. But anyways, regarding the kids, I thought they were all cast rather well. I think they had very good chemistry. It was an ensemble cast. And they all obviously had different fears. Fears that the creature known as It, a.k.a. Pennywise the Dancing Clown, preyed upon. He preyed upon kids' fears. And once the kids were, nice and juicy, ripe with fear, that's when It would feast upon the kids. That's when they would disappear. And most of the town were oblivious to what was going on because of how long It had been existing deep within the sewers of the town of Derry, and the fact that it has the power to make people forget about it. It has a certain sense of influence over the town as a whole for a very, very long time. And so you have the Losers Club, led by Bill and Ben and, of course, Bev. They're the three main leaders of the Losers Club. They each have their reasons for, wanting to fight It. I'm not going to spoil it once again. I'm going to try not to, at least for all of you that never read the book or watched the miniseries. But yeah, I mean, I thought that it was, for the most part, pretty faithful to the book. Now, you have to expect that anytime you see a movie or a miniseries version of a novel, there's always going to be changes. Some of them are more crazy. Some of them are like, why did they change that? Why did they do this? Why did they do that? And some things get left out. And some things were probably for the best to be left out when it comes to the movie version as opposed to the book version of it. But overall, I think that it was fairly faithful to the first half of the novel, and the way that you really related to these kids. You sympathize with them. They're each, got their own thing going on. They're all outsiders, losers. And of course, you have another faction of kids that are kind of the bullies. And all of them have been, for more or less picked on by the same group. So they serve as kind of like secondary antagonists, along with It, which is the primary antagonist. And it's a shapeshifter. Most of you probably already knew that. But its favorite form is Pennywise the Dancing Clown. And once again, Bill Skarsgård, I think that's how you pronounce his name. If I mispronounced it, I apologize. It won't be the last time I mispronounce anything. I'm very bad about that. But I thought he did a fantastic role as Pennywise. And some people that, wanted to compare him to Tim Curry's Pennywise, that's a mistake because, there's always going to be different interpretations regarding a character. Like, for example, some people love Michael Keaton's Batman, or Christian Bale's Batman, or even Ben Affleck's Batman. It doesn't mean any of the Batmans are better or worse than the other. It's just that these are different interpretations. And the same thing goes between Tim Curry's and Bill Skarsgård's versions of Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Overall, I thought he did a fantastic job as the role of Pennywise, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he brings to the table when it comes to It Chapter 2, whenever it comes out. Hopefully not too long, and hopefully the same production team, the same director will be behind It Chapter 2, and here's hoping that WB as well as New Line Cinema, they don't try and stretch this out into a trilogy, kind of like what they did with The Hobbit. That was a huge mistake, by the way. And I think that it's best just to try and wrap it up. I mean, I realize it made a ton of money for the studios involved in the production company. So obviously there is a desire for more movies. But hopefully they'll just realize that all we want is one more sequel, a chapter 2, to wrap up the rest of the novel when the kids become adults and how they have to come back to Derry and fight It again. Now, we're not going to go into any more spoilers, but I will say this. If you are a fan of horror, if you are looking for something to give you a few frights, a few scares, even some funny moments, and good chemistry between the cast, I would say It is definitely a movie worth checking out. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It wasn't too long, and I wouldn't have had a problem if it was a few more minutes long in order to flesh out more characters, maybe add a few more scenes, but at a runtime of 2 hours and 15 minutes, it's right there in the Goldilocks area. Not too short yet, at the same time, not too long. But, if it would have gone for another 10, 20, 30 minutes, I would have been perfectly happy about that. Especially if it would have included a few more scenes from the novel. Not, the one scene that a lot of people have been talking about. I'm glad that scene never made it into the miniseries or this movie because it's very weird. So I would say my review of It 2017, aka It Chapter 1, between going to see it in theaters or waiting for it to come out and purchase it, or waiting for it to be red boxed or digitally downloaded. If you're into this kind of movie, like I said, if you're into the horror genre, if you're a fan of Stephen King like I am, if you loved the book, I would definitely consider checking out this movie. But just realize that it's its own interpretation of it. It's not going to be 100% faithful to the book or to the miniseries, but at the same time, it is really good, and I think it's faithful enough to be worthy of all the praise that it's getting, not only from the author himself, Stephen King, but from most critics and fans out there. So definitely, if you're into horror, if you're into the novel, if you're a Stephen King fan, you definitely deserve to at least go to the matinee and check out It 2017 for yourself. And hopefully It Chapter 2 will be a worthy sequel, and they won't cast like big name actors or actresses to be the adult versions, because I really don't think that we need that. We just need actors and actresses that we can relate to, that have chemistry, that we can be like, okay, that's an older version of Ben. That's obviously an older version of Mike and Bev and Bill and the rest of the Losers Club as well. So let me know below in the comment section your thoughts, your views, your opinions regarding It Chapter 1. And with that out of the way, let us move on to the spoilers regarding It 2017. For those of you that just want to have my views and opinions more in depth regarding, TV shows, movies, franchises, I will do spoilers as well. So anyways, obviously very brutal, very scary, and I think that was to be expected from this as opposed to the 1990s version of It on ABC, because it was still on TV. I mean, it was scary for its time, especially if you were a kid watching it like I was, but it's nowhere near as scary as It 2017. Of course, people's tastes have changed over the past several decades. And I do like the fact that 27 years have passed between the miniseries and the movie, which is the same time period that it, slumbers, goes into hibernation before its next quote-unquote feeding. So yeah, it has been around Derry for a very long time, centuries in fact, killing people, even children, because children are more susceptible to fear, but it can go after the fears of adults and eat adults as well. And it just happens to spawn in the late 80s. I like the fact it's set in the late 80s because of, I guess, the resurgence of interest in the 1980s now. You have Stranger Things as well as a lot of retro stuff going on. There's a lot of video games that have 80s vibes to it. And as an 80s kid, it's kind of cool to see that, the nostalgia to it. And it makes sense. Now, there's a lot of creatures that it changes into in the novel that it doesn't change into in the movie, and that's for obvious reasons. In the 1950s, the werewolf and the creature from the Black Lagoon and the mummy, those were very, very scary to kids in the 1950s. It's a lot different in the 80s, 30 years later. I mean, I wouldn't have had a problem with, a werewolf or with a mummy or, if they would have tried to make it work, but I do like the fact that they kind of like freshened it a little bit, setting wise. It made more sense to do it that way, especially since they're obviously going to do Chapter 2 set, around this timeline, 2017 or 2018 or 2019, whenever, production gets underway, they get it filmed, edited, wrapped up, and they, set a release date, hopefully a year or two from now. So they wanted to do that, which makes complete sense, like I mentioned. Now the kids, like I said in my review before the spoilers, I thought all the kids were cast rather well. We had a fair amount of time with all of them for the most part. I will say one complaint I will have is regarding Mike. And my complaint is not the actor himself. I think he did a fantastic job. It's that for some reason they took an important piece of Mike away and they gave it to Ben. And see, Mike was the one who knew about the history of the town of Derry. And, that's one thing I liked about the miniseries is that they were faithful to that regarding Mike in the miniseries. In fact, he's the one who stays behind when everyone else moves away from Derry. He becomes the librarian at the local library in the miniseries and the novel. So Mike is a very important character in the miniseries and the book. And hopefully he'll be even more important in Chapter 2 because, like I said, he's the one character that remained in Derry. And as I mentioned in the review, it has this power to make people forget. And the rest of the Losers Club, when they move away, they forget about it. They go about their lives. They're all, for the most part, successful in what they do. But whenever they come back, because of Mike's the one who, sees the killings reoccur, and he realizes that it has returned. And he's the one that's trying to, bring the Losers Club back together. And, the rest of the adults, the adult versions of the Losers Club, have to remember all the horrors that they endured, at, its hands or claws, aka Pennywise, when they were younger. So I really wish that they would have kept that aspect of Mike, because I felt like they kind of took that away from him and they gave it to Ben. And I feel like it was unnecessary. even though Ben is the new kid in town, whereas Mike was the real outsider. I still feel like that it was kind of a disservice to Mike, but at the same time, they still add stuff for Mike's character as well. It just kind of sucks that they did that. But, once again, there's always going to be differences between movie versions, like miniseries versions compared to the book. And like I said in the review, I feel like that, they were pretty faithful with the movie version of the first half of the novel, It. And there's a lot of Easter eggs in the movie that only a hardcore fan would know about, like the turtle, for example, the arch enemy of It. A lot of people be like, what's the turtle doing in this? What's this turtle all about? There's some other cool things too. Another thing I didn't like regarding another character, part of the Losers Club, was what they did with Bev. I love the actress that portrays Bev, by the way. I think she was fantastic for the role. I don't like that they turned her into the damsel in distress near the end. So there's a scene where she finally stands up to her sexually abusive father, and Pennywise kidnaps her. This does not happen in the novel, and this does not happen in the miniseries. Bev's actually the one that's the best when it comes to shooting Pennywise. Now, in the novel and in the miniseries, the kids figured out a way to fight back against Pennywise, to use his own strengths to get against him. Like, if he's a werewolf, then the way to take down a werewolf is with silver. So they use silver against Pennywise, and in order to shoot silver at Pennywise, they had to use a slingshot. And none of the Losers Club were very good with the slingshot, except for Bev. She was the best. She was the marksman of the group. And I really wish that they would not have turned Bev into the damsel of distress. I'm surprised that they did, especially it being 2017 now. But then again, the movie is set in the late 1980s, when you still had a lot more damsel in distress going on. But still, I found it as a strange move that they would do that. I would have preferred them coming up with another reason for the Losers Club to go down there and fight It. I think they had enough reason because of what It was doing. The fact that It killed Bill's little brother, the fact that It had terrorized all the kids in the Losers Clubs, that they knew that if they didn't stop It one by one, It was going to pick them off and continue picking off other kids as well. So I think the motivation for them to go after It was already there. It's just that for some reason the team behind the movie decided that there had to be a moment where the kids, fell apart for like a month, and they decided not to go after It, which is also fascinating because you think in that moment, once they broke apart, that would have been kind of like blood in the water for It to, finish them off, because they were no longer united together for at least a few weeks or a month. They were off doing their own thing, and that would have been the opportunity for Pennywise to take them all out. Take out Stan, and take out Eddie, and then take out Bill, take out Ben, take out Mike, take out Bev. So I don't think there was ever a reason for them to fall apart until after, several of them moved away. In fact, all of them except for Mike. But overall, like I said in the review, I absolutely love this movie. I can't wait to watch it again. It's definitely one of those movies that you kind of sort of want to go back to the theater and endure, dealing with other people and sitting there watching 30 some odd minutes of trailers. Most of them you don't give a shit for, overpriced for the food and soda in order to watch the movie again. But yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I loved it. And it definitely had some scary moments. It wasn't as scary to me because, like I mentioned, read the book. It took me a while to read the book, so. But first off, before I ever read the book, I watched the miniseries when I was a kid, which scared the living hell out of me. That along with Freddy Krueger. And the little troll from Cat's Eye. But yeah, I expected a lot of things to transpire, and they did the same way they did. There were some differences with the bullies, and I didn't like some of the changes made there. Like two of the bullies, we don't know what happened to them. I assume that they're still alive in the movie. One of the bullies, which was actually had a lot more bigger role in the novel, he gets killed off real quickly in the movie. And I kind of wish there would have been more kills. Like, they mentioned a couple kids that disappear at the hands of Pennywise, and I think there was at least a few more mentioned in the novel. And I would have kind of liked to have seen those. You know, just see Pennywise actually get a couple of the kids. And obviously, if you watch the miniseries, if you watch The Losers, if you watch the miniseries and you read the graphic novel, you know that the Losers Club, you know, for the most part, survived their first encounter with it. So the fear that any of them were going to die at the hands of Pennywise, that wasn't there for me. It could have been there for the rest of the audience that never, you know, read the novel or watched the miniseries. So that fear, that, you know, anticipation, that stress about, is this character going to be next? Is Eddie going to survive? Is Mike going to survive? What's going to happen to Bev? I can see that from someone going in that never read the novel or watched the miniseries. And even watching the miniseries is no guarantee, no safe bet, because, you know, they could have simply decided, you know what, one of the Losers Clubs have to go. And one of them nearly did. Actually, two of them nearly did. You know, Stan, you know, he nearly got it. And, you know, Bev came very close to being taken out by it as well. But like I mentioned, I loved it. It's been a while since I've watched a really good movie that I enjoyed. It was also scary. It was very well written. I wish there would have been more scenes. Not the scene after they defeat it with the quote-unquote orgy. When I read that when I was a kid, I was like, what the hell is this? And I was in my teens too, by the way. I was like, what? I mean, yeah, when you're a teen, you're thinking about the other girl or another guy. But to have this orgy between, you know, several boys and one girl, it's just, for some reason, you know, it didn't seem right. So, I mean, I know Stephen King's tried to explain it away several times. I think there's even part of him that kind of wishes he could just take it back and kind of exited out that scene, because you really didn't need it. You could have just fast forwarded after they defeated it the first time with the blood pack, just like in the movie. They do have the blood pack, by the way, at the end. So, yeah, I'm really hoping that Chapter 2 lives up to the first movie, that it does maybe even add some things that were missing from Chapter 1. I also hope, like I mentioned, that the studios are just let the team be the same team, the same directors, same writers, same producers, and just let them, you know, complete this vision, you know, from the novel to the two movies. And I do stress 2 movies, New Line Cinema. Please just keep it 2 movies. I know how much money this movie has made. Like we just mentioned, $400 million. That's a lot of cheese. And I know the temptation when it comes to movies like this to sequelize it or prequelize it. I do fear that could very well happen with it. Now, maybe, just maybe, they'll do a Chapter 2, which will wrap up the novel, and then maybe they'll, just to make more money, maybe they'll do a prequel set before the time of the novel, you know, because it has been around Derry for several centuries, and it's an ancient, multidimensional creature. I get that. So, I mean, a prequel, maybe I could live with. It depends on how well they do it, along with, you know, keeping true to the source material within the novel. But I think most of us would prefer it to just be 2 movies, a Chapter 1, a Chapter 2, wrap it up, move on to something else. And that's another interesting thing. Because of the success of this movie, it wouldn't surprise me if we see more Stephen King novels and former miniseries, you know, get, you know, the big screen treatment, like The Stand, for example, maybe even a new version of Cat's Eye or Needful Things, Langoliers, perhaps. I love Langoliers, you know, but, you know, the Langoliers were a little cheesy. Of course, you're talking about special effects, you know, from back in the late 90s, yeah. But, you know, one thing I really wish is that Dark Tower would have been a lot better, but, you know, you can't have everything, right?